thanks everybody for attending. I'm very excited about this. It's really neat to be here in Vegas as always. And then of course here at HP Discover, there's very neat stuff going on. And today we're going to talk about HDI, which I find to just be truly amazing. My name is Doug Brown. I come from the Citrix world. I've been in the Citrix world since pretty much day one. And you hear a lot of talk about VDI and SBC and all these different things. And today I think we're going to talk about my personal favorite, which is the HDI. We also have a great panel here of just truly experts. So I'll go through real quick, or they'll go through real quick and introduce themselves. So, Dane?
Hey everyone, I'm Dane Young. I'm a solutions architect at Intersys Solutions in California. I also have a blog site that you can find at itvce.com. That's itvce.com, or you can just Google Moonshot and Citrix, and you'll probably find a number of hits on my site. If you're on Twitter, you can follow me at YoungTech, my last name, which is Young, and then T-E-C-H.
James.
So my name is James Davis. I also work at Intersys. I also work at the special branch called Sky Canvas. I'm the VP of Innovation and the Director of Cloud and Virtualization Strategies.
Thad Morrow, VP of Business Development at Intersys, and I'm going to have to tell you guys a little bit more about them because they're so shy and they don't say it. So these two gentlemen here are CTPs. There's only 48 in the world, so Citrix has designated them literally as the experts when it comes to Citrix technology. James Davis has worked for Citrix, so these are literally some of the smartest people in the Citrix industry, or virtualization, desktop virtualization, server-based computing, which he mentioned earlier. Most people don't say that anymore, server-based computing.
But it's still relevant.
It's awesome.
So great. And of course, we want to thank AMD for bringing us here and talking about all this great stuff. So also I wanted to mention real quick my website, DABCC.com. So definitely visit that stuff. So we have a lot to talk about. Let's get straight to it. So we're going to be talking about this, and you'll see it some t-shirts when you're all said and done. Head over to the AMD booth and you can pick up one of these fancy little t-shirts, Let's Get Physical. So what is this whole Let's Get Physical thing about in this idea of HDI and physicalization, which I even have trouble spitting out? Guys?
So, I mean, when you start looking at physicalization, it is the innovation from the hardware to actually provide a microserver architecture that can provide us with both the user experience that we're looking for and also the decreased complexity that we're looking for as well in a single chassis type environment. Now, personally, when I think about physicalization, I always laugh because I always go, well, would I need a firewall if I had created a VPN first? Right, and that's kind of the situation that you're in, is because physicalization has taken the idea of putting that same consolidation ratio that you're doing in virtualization and actually built physical microservers that fit in that particular 4.3U scenario.
The way I like to think of it is it's solution-defined hardware. It's hardware that HP has built specifically for a particular solution. And in the case of HDI, it's specifically built for desktops, so Windows 7, Windows 8.1, client operating systems hosted out of your data center. It's a solution that HP has brought to market specifically for that caveat or that scenario versus the industry standard server stuff, which is general purpose. You use it for just about anything under the sun.
Yeah, and the way I like to think about it is, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, we have a question on it, we're going to dive deeper, it's about user experience. Yep. It's about getting out of what we're doing and not having that layer there that has a little bit of a cost and or depletes that user experience. And I think it's the greatest thing. So
I actually want to weigh in on this. I'm not the technical guy, so I'll talk about the non-tech stuff, like using this technology. So I've been using Citrix forever, probably 15 years, so I'm okay with it. 15 years ago, printing didn't work. You couldn't connect. I mean, it was a nightmare. But I dealt with it. I love the technology because I literally can work from anywhere. What I've seen with the evolution of VDI, which we're talking about HDI here, is everyone here does virtualization, correct? 10 years ago, did you virtualize databases? Absolutely not. Are you doing it now? Yeah. So it's about the evolution of the technology. And the way I see it with what AMD is doing and HP Moonshot is the evolution of making this stuff feasible.
Yeah.
A reality.
Really
like I could actually use this stuff. I could, if I'm a graphic designer, or I'm an admin checking in people at a front desk. This technology is evolving similar to what virtualization did. You virtualize everything now. And that's what I'm looking at with what AMD's doing and what Moonshot's doing is this is the evolution. This is really what's going to progress us forward to make this achievable for everyone.
You bet. Now I want to ask you guys real quick, show of hands, how many of you are familiar with HDI, what HDI is?
Awesome.
Okay, good.
It's like
how many of you guys have done any proof of concepts or maybe have it in production? Anybody? Great. Oh, awesome. just wanting a couple people. So definitely.
That's the VDI question. Who here is doing VDI?
Yeah, who knows about VDI? Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Perfect.
Good.
Well, we have a better solution for you.
That's what I thought.
Much better. Okay, so can you talk a bit about the architecture? You know, talk about Moonshot, how Moonshot fits into this, AMD, things like that.
Yeah, I won't take that one.
Please, yes, thank you.
I can take that one. So within the Citrix stack, there's always what we would define as the management layer, and then there's the resource layer. So the resource layer, you'd usually have a dedicated virtualization cluster that supports all of your virtual machines, whether those are XenApp or Zen Desktop VDI instances, basically client operating system or server operating system. This does not fit in the management aspect of this, so you still have that management layer. You've got your brokers, you've got your storefront, so the access components, you've got your NetScalers. That's all sitting on the side, but once you're actually established and once you have this set up, you're brokering sessions to the physical hardware. Instead of brokering sessions to virtual machines that are sitting on a hypervisor, that are sitting on SAN and shared network resources, you're actually brokering it to a dedicated piece of hardware.
Hold on. Now everybody got that. There's no hypervisor. All right.
Yeah, but it's not 1,000 boxes also.
Exactly.
That's the benefit of Moonshot.
Right.
So you got it. So how does that fit in with Citrix? You know, with Citrix Zen Desktop? Because Zen Desktop, to me, is virtualization. I need a hypervisor. I'm going to throw a desktop on that hypervisor. So how does this fit with Citrix?
Well, interestingly enough, right now they are the only ISV or vendor that has actually got a go-to-market strategy with HP for Moonshot. So if you want to deliver HDI, Citrix is going to be your partner. VMware's not going to do it, Microsoft's not going to do it right now. Citrix is going to be the strategy. So if you're familiar and you've done Citrix technologies before, maybe you've heard of provisioning services, which we call PVS. That fits in line with this technology for the non-persistent scenario, but I don't want to steal thunder from our next question. So,
well, if I could, you know, how it fits in with Citrix. Citrix was the only one that decided in the very beginning to create a complete desktop virtualization platform. It is agnostic based on Hyper-V, Zen Server, VMware, and that has...
Or physical.
Or physical.
Yep.
That is the one key that has helped really gain you the return on investment that you're looking for from this particular conversation, because if you have a provisioning server scenario and you were thinking about doing a proof of value or a POC in some situation, but you take the box and you stick it in, you take the box and you're able to stick it directly in and provision the exact same image, you're provisioning your current virtualization environment today. You don't have to retest the image, you don't have to retest a lot of the key scenarios that are in play. You're able to actually leverage it directly from that right off the bat.
I think you're having some mic problems.
I think so too. I think I should have got the handheld.
So one of the things that I mentioned before, I've been selling Citrix forever, and quite honestly, until Moonshot came out, I was talking to James, and I was like, there's no hypervisor, there's no virtualization. I had no idea that you could run Zen Desktop physical.
Yep.
No hypervisor.
Yep.
And I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are the same ways. You probably didn't know that you could run it without a hypervisor.
Well, guess what, Thad? We have customers that are running it today without a hypervisor.
Yeah,
you sold it to them.
It's called PC farms. So there's this concept where customers would actually have racks and racks and racks of, we're at Discover, so HP desktops that are sitting in a rack, and they're brokering connections to those desktops in a rack, right? It's what we call poor man's VDI. Whatever.
CVCI.
CVCI.
That was the actual name.
So this is basically an approach that would allow you to do that type of scenario, but actually get the rack density, get the power efficiency, get the cooling efficiency, without that type of scenario of running desktops in a rack.
Perfect. So, well, this sounds a lot like VDI. We've sort of beat up on VDI already, but let's sort of continue doing that because I really enjoy it. And it needs to be beat up too, right? Because we have a better solution. So what are the differences between, let's get into some specifics of the differences between VDI and HDI. And we'll start with advantages over, the advantages over a virtual desktop or virtualization in being that it's physical. So, Dane, do you want to take that one, or?
Well, we can kind of start off with the fact that, so if you're kind of looking at the picture, that server cartridge can basically be broken up into 4 particular physical desktops, if you will. So with that, it can hold 45 cartridges in that 4.3 space. So that's 180 desktops that you're able to now actually have real-life users on and actually have the real-life user experience. Because I'll tell you what, working with VDI, I'm sure that you guys have heard that it's slow, right? And everybody understands slow is an opinion, right? It's not a fact.
Yeah, but perception's reality.
Perception is reality. And so
then
often,
it's a fact.
Right, exactly. Often you'd have to get to a level of adoption inside of your virtual desktop environment so that people are happy with the experience. And it has to be a better experience than they currently have today in their environment so that the adoption actually works. This is one device that is going to help address that gap of reality that is sitting in between those special units that we can do with VDI and those high graphics that we can do on the other side. This sits in the spot in which everybody can take advantage of the level of productivity, the level of user experience, and still gain that total cost of ownership and ROI at that same time. So it's really about the 4 that you can cut up in the 45, so that 180 desktops in that 4.3 space is amazing to have in this conversation. Yeah. Everybody can expect what they could do if it wasn't that. So there's a major difference between HDI and VDI.
Yeah, and I'll say, the solution as it exists right now, the AMD M700 cartridge, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Like James mentioned, it fits right in the middle. It's not going to do high-end designer CAD engineering type of things that you would normally expect a workstation blade would be able to do. That's not what it's tailored for. It's not going to be cost effective to do the other end where you need a lockdown experience, you need a task-based worker, whether it's a front desk type of scenario or you've got a call center. Those would be more fit for like a RDSH type of scenario, XenApp, remote desktop services, those types of scenarios. This is more in that midline, more of the knowledge worker type of scenario where they need dedicated experience, they need a consistent user experience, and they just want this stuff to work every time they come into the office.
I think that's the critical part that we should get from this is the evolution of the technology is this technology isn't for the task worker, but it's part of the overall solution.
Right.
So if you're trying to take advantage of the technology, but you're trying to get task workers on this or the knowledge-based workers on a less powerful machine, then you're probably going to have a failed implementation.
Right.
Well, I think, I use this term very loosely, and it's called a knowledge-based worker attenuation. Okay? Same scenario that you're getting when you look at it, the fact that I have a physical hypervisor, and that hypervisor can get to a certain level of consolidation aspect ratio. That means that many people can get on that box. But when you do that, at what level do you start seeing tasks start to degrade? Right? And as you're looking at it, that if you're a transaction-based company and you saw these tasks starting to degrade, then all of a sudden you're in the situation where this was a bad idea to get involved within. So this provides you the ability not to get into that knowledge-based worker attenuation because the amount of each blade sets the exposure ratio down to 4. Right? When those blades go out, I got 4 people who can't work. Right? I don't have 90 people who can't work because I did VDI in that nature.
Perfect. Do we want to take when you look at Moonshot, some people say, well, that's a lot like blades. And then do you want to take that question?
Sure, I can take that one.
Please.
So I'm actually a big fan of blade PCs. HP has their RGS protocol that we've seen a lot of success with, and specifically oil and gas, because it's a really expensive solution. So you kind of need a really expensive solution for really expensive workers that are doing really expensive tasks. But the challenge, whether it's Blade PCs with RGS or Zen Desktop and the ICA HDX protocol, the challenge is always the cost scenario. How much does a Blade PC cost with dedicated discrete graphics? And can I give that out to all of my users, or do I only have to like target the users that I would otherwise give a $5,000 to $10,000 workstation? And you usually only target that at the people that would otherwise get a beefy box under their desk, a $5,000 to $10,000 workstation. They would be a good candidate for Blade PCs. The beauty of this solution is that it takes the same premise and the same concept of Blade PCs and discrete hardware, discrete compute resources, discrete RAM, and it boils that down to a micro scenario where you could actually do that type of scenario in a cost-effective manner so that anybody in your organization that's doing let's say a $500 PC to a $2,000 PC or laptop, somebody in that range would actually get the same or better experience in an HDI scenario based on the dedicated compute resources. So it's more in that range than the $5,000 to $10,000 workstation range.
So Kim, let's go further in on that dedicated compute resource conversation. The storage is based on the card, the networks are based inside the box, everything is built inside the actual chassis itself. So you're getting that discrete capability because it is actually a SSD that's on the actual cartridge itself. So what does that stop you from? Well, it stops a lot of the SAN issues that I currently have to deal with. It stops a lot of the complexity of provisioning out virtual desktops in the nature that we're currently doing it today, because all those resources are consolidated in that one box.
You know, and what it really gives to me, and what I care about at the end of the day, is that user perception, right? And
Exactly.
It's all, so, you know, you can talk about all the great stuff it gives us technically, and that's all fine and dandy, but if the users aren't happy, it doesn't really matter, right?
Right.
In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was a very junior engineer, I was worked with the senior engineer, and he looked at me and said, Doug, you can build a great network, but if the end users don't perceive it's a great network, you will never be a great engineer. I looked at him and I was like, oh, whatever. And then he taught me about perception. So, and he taught me about user experience. And that changed everything for me. So let's talk a bit about user experience, because that is something that's so phenomenal with HDI comparatively speaking to the other technologies. So,
well, I want to take that one just real quick, is because I've been using Citrix forever and been selling it forever. I always said that when we did an implementation, if your car didn't start, it was Citrix's fault.
Yeah.
So when we would go in, it would be like, oh, it's all this Citrix stuff, like, oh, my icon over here isn't, reacting. It's Citrix, it's Citrix, it's Citrix. Yeah. So it's user perception. And my boss is over there. This is a good story. We're in an airport. We're talking to someone. What do you do? We do blah blah blah. We work with Citrix. Oh, Citrix sucks. No, Citrix doesn't suck. Your integrator sucks. Yeah. So that is the critical part about it too, is the user perception, is making sure that you do it correctly.
Yeah. How many users woke up this morning and said, gee, I can't wait to use that new HP router, or that new Moonshot? Nobody, right? They woke up this morning and said,
I got a lot of work to do.
I got to make a PowerPoint. I have to, darn, I got to work on that spreadsheet. They don't even call by name. So it's about user experience. So let's get into the user experience, because, again, that's so phenomenal.
So when we did intros, I forgot to plug my session, but if you're around on Thursday at noon, I'm doing a session on HDI. You can find it in the session catalog. In that session, I actually have screenshots and different things that I've collected showing the user experience and showing the performance indexes using a common tool in the industry called Login VSI. And usually Login VSI is used to test how many users can I get on a box. And this goes back to what James was talking about with attenuation. The more users you get on the box, the lesser that experience is for the users that are on the box. So you can over consolidate to no end and get 500 users on a box, but if the user experience is degraded to a point where it's an unusable system, you've failed as an IT engineer. So with Moonshot, it's not that equation. Instead, it's, do my users actually fit this scenario? Are my users a good fit for this scenario? And does it provide enough compute, memory, and storage resources to what they're actually looking to do? And if that's the case, the math is already taken care of for you. It's 180 users, right? The box fits 180 users. You don't have to figure out, can I get that 360 users on this? No, you buy a second chassis, right? It's not a matter of figuring out how many users can I get on the box. It's a matter of figuring out, are my users going to be a good fit Or are they going to want their desktop immediately back because I tried to undersize the environment for their needs?
Or your IT director or CIO can't say, well, just put a few more on because
Right.
we don't want to buy that new box.
Right.
So
No, it takes all the math out of trying to figure out when am I going to fall off that cliff.
Yep.
So whenever you're dealing with user experience, those of you who raised your hand and said, yeah, we do VDI, I preach a lot that you have to have a user experience index so that you can actually have a even-to-even conversation with your users, because I'll tell you what's happened a lot of times is that when you do VDI and everything goes to the back or it goes to the SAN and the back end, the guy that's actually supporting the help desk, whose actual job is to get user experience and productivity for the user, he has no recourse anymore. He doesn't know about the SAN, he doesn't know about the hypervisor, he doesn't know about any of those key scenarios. This is a situation in which you bring that destiny and that conversation back into their hands. They can actually have a conversation. Well, it's not working? Well, great, we can actually fix something. Because I've sat in a room with 20 people and we did a deploy of Zen Desktop and every single person got their desktop except this one guy. Well, what's the problem? Well, I don't know. In the end, it was a receiver issue. But my point is that the person at the other end doesn't have that conversation point. Now, if something's wrong, it's something wrong with that particular desktop. Yep. And there's something that I can do to fix that desktop. Yep. And that's key to the conversation around adoption.
Okay, guys, we only have about 8.5 minutes left, so I want to get to something that engineers usually don't talk about. And that's licensing costs. Whenever somebody says to me licensing, I'm like, well, I'll go talk to this guy over here. I don't know what licensing, but one of the great things about HDI is the licensing and cost.
Yep.
So let's do licensing first. Do we need all these, is it a complex, when you think VDI, I can't even comprehend licensing. What do we need to license HDI?
Well, since there's no SAN infrastructure, there's no industry standard server infrastructure, there's a lot less licensing from the SAN perspective. You don't need software suites for the different SAN components. You don't need any of the software suites for your Blade Center or anything like that. The Microsoft aspect is usually the #1 key component when you're talking about VDI and HDI, because Microsoft wants their piece every year. It's weird how that works. But the concept is basically the same for HDI. If you have physical PCs that are qualified workstations that are covered under your EA, you're covered for HDI. You can deliver HDI desktops to those qualified workstations and they're covered under their SA. If you don't have that because you're trying to go the thin client route or you want to extend access remotely to workers that are at home, then you need what's called the VDA, or the Virtual Desktop Assurance License. And that's the same whether it's VDI or HDI. The other difference is because there's no hypervisor in this mix, you don't have to pay the VMware license or the System Center license, or if you're doing Zen, it's included if you're doing Zen Desktop. But you don't have to pay for System Center or Hyper-V, and you don't have to pay for VMware if you're doing a VMware shop.
And the vCenter agent.
And the
well.
vCenter license, yeah.
You got it. What about cost, overall cost, total cost of ownership? And I know, James, you've done a lot of work around that.
Absolutely. I think the total cost of ownership conversation comes into really, really good play when you start thinking about the drift at a certain level, and then of course the actual cost of the box and the cost of what people are doing. We recently did a college as an example, and when you do a college, we went out and we did the model user, right? We did the right tools to find the right, how big should we make the VM, how we should put this out and everything of that nature. But what we didn't really anticipate is that these are kids. And kids love music, and they love sharing music, and they love going out and doing all kinds of stuff. And so all this, yeah, exactly, right? How that was built in the college, right? When all that happens, that knowledge worker, that drift starts happening in that environment, which causes VDI to start costing more because people are trying to get to that next user experience and bring it up. I can't express to you enough how that happens in that scenario. This is a discrete PC. So your total cost of ownership is that device, plus the software that's on top of it and what you need to put out there. If you look at the industry standard, this device in a TCO is roughly about $1,300. If you look at the TCO of a normal desktop environment, it's $2,300, right? So you're already going to be saving money in a total cost of ownership by implementing this. But the key, I can't express enough, is that all the things that you love about that Zen desktop and that single image and that capability to put, you know, it out there, and all those things still exist inside this box, right? You still gain all those provisional capabilities that you went after the first time, you're still going to gain by implementing this box. And there's no other box like that in this conversation that you can do that same thing with.
To keep the conversation moving, but just add one other piece. One of the cost factors that nobody really equates for is how much does it take to onboard a new group of users? Say you have 500 users in your environment today, but your organization needs to grow to 2,500 users on a solution by next year, by next calendar year. How much does it take you today to bring in those servers, to bring in that storage, to provision the storage to the hypervisor, to create the virtual machine, to take your image that you already had, to create new virtual machines, create all this different workflow, versus how much does it take to actually just drop into chassis, run a single PowerShell command, get all of the MAC addresses from that particular chassis, plug those into provisioning services and say, we just got 180 new desktops. Less than an hour, in my opinion, and in my experience, to bring on a new chassis to an existing environment versus the time that it would take you to provision the storage, provision the servers, provision the virtual machines in a hypervisor-based context.
So I want to jump in on that on the ROI. Is ironically, we were all in the same meeting, the very large organization, which I'm sure many of you guys work for a large company, and we were talking about the project and this and that. Oh, hey, we need a server to do blah, blah, blah. It's like, it takes 6 months to get a server. 6 months to get a server? Like, really? So how would you ever do a project like this? How would you ever do virtual desktops if it takes 6 months? How are you ever going to realize your ROI? Ever. Right. And that's the thing with a moonshot. It's like, no, we're gonna do it all. We're gonna pop it in there. Give me some space. Give me a couple IP addresses, which probably takes 4 months. But
I was going to say IP. I remember spending a couple days just getting an IP address, and I thought to myself, I just charged you so much for you to just give me an IP address. But we digress. Guys, we only have a couple minutes left, and we want to do just a little bit of house cleaning real quick. So I've hoped you've enjoyed the session. We could sit up here for hours and talk about this stuff. These guys...
We're actually going to.
We are going to.
Talk about the podcast.
Yes, well, that's exactly right. So,
Thad.
You're going to kill me for that one. Thad, you want to talk about what we're doing?
Yes, so you're seeing, I'm not supposed to look up here, but I'm going to look up here. The podcast and conversations is actually, if you go to, everyone has a computer in their hand, go to DABCC.com. Doug is actually analyst. What do you call yourself?
I call myself an engineer.
Yeah. Well, he's a guru. You're number 2 in iTunes for your virtualization podcast.
We were number 1, except for Citrix overtook us, but I really don't count them because they're a vendor and they just build things. But we do a lot of podcasts.
We're doing a podcast with Doug. We're doing both audio and video. We would love for you guys to come. Anyone that wants to do a podcast, these podcasts could be 30 seconds, 5 minutes. We just want to have conversations, put them out there on the internet. Yep. Your peers could listen to it. Your boss can say, wow, he actually did go to something at Discover. We definitely we encourage you guys to come and talk to us, continue this conversation. I think it's really critical. The one thing that I have experienced working with these 3 guys is sharing information. I've always said that to people. It's like, you go to these events, no offense to all these guys here, it's great what they're doing, but the magic happens here. When you meet your peers and you talk to others and you share information, and that's what Doug's site's all about. And if you guys, we would love for you to share your information, share your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to know what you guys are doing too.
The guy that was doing
the HDI guy,
the POC guy, we want
HDI,
you for sure.
Raise your hand again. He's looking down right there.
We want you at the podcast for sure.
We want to talk to you. So also, we are AMD is really kind of giving away an Xbox One. So if you guys put your business card in this little fishbowl, then we're going to walk over to the AMD booth and draw
and get a shirt.
A winner.
Yeah.
Also,
so this is what we're talking about.
Anybody that comes over to the AMD booth, you can get a shirt over there.
Yeah, but definitely mention you were at this session and
when
you
you
really
wear this shirt,
that.
people are going to say, Olivia Newton-John, right? Of course.
Yes, I thought of that. Thank you.
What does this mean? Let's get physical. And that's what this is the conversation point.
This is the conversation.
It is. This is what gets people talking. What does that shirt mean?
Well, you can see them. It's all about moonshot and all about HDI and all about doing really desktops better. And at the end of the day, and that's what it is.
I
for the
got
last 10
yeah,
seconds,
10
I'll
seconds.
say
I got to give a quick plug. Matt Kimball, our contact at AMD, he's been fantastic for us. Great partner, great technology, just absolutely a great company to work with. I can't say anything more about AMD other than they're just absolutely, we're out of time. So I'm done.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.